Call this meeting to order. Are we ready?
Sure.
The clock says 4:58.
Yes, I know.
That went off. There's no clock over there.
Oh, where is?
There's nothing to see here.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Will you please stand for a moment of silence, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, Council, I'm just going to go ahead and put this out up front. When the staff comes up and present, if we have questions, if someone has questions for one of them, let's everybody get their questions out of the way so we don't have to keep calling them up and sending them back, okay?
All right.
All right, Mr. Benton.
Oh, roll call.
Roll call first.
Mayor Jones,
Present.
Vice Mayor Nunn,
Here.
Councilmember Dixon,
Here.
Councilmember Dodd,
Here.
and Councilmember McPartlin.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight, starting off first, we've got the budget workshop, and it's an opportunity. We're going to have Mr. Kilgore come up and give a brief presentation to address some items and clarify how funds can be utilized just for public knowledge and to ensure everyone is aware of how those funds can be expended. And then I've got Ms. Watson is going to come up and give a little bit of information from the human resources side. And then at that point, it'll be an opportunity for you all to ask any questions of myself or any of the department heads. They're all here. They'll be able to answer any questions that you have. I didn't ask them to do a presentation because we only have an hour right now. But I do ask, as the mayor stated, that, questions for any specific department while that department head is up here, if there's any questions, to try to ask them at that time. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Kilgore at the current time and let him get started with his presentation.
Good evening. Okay, I had provided a PowerPoint in your packets. I'm not going to go page by page on this one. I think most of you are familiar with what's in the slide. I'd be glad to take any questions, however. I did come to the end, well, basically what I presented to you in the slides was the objectives we had going into this budget year, some of the challenges we have, some of the positive aspects of those challenges, some solutions, and some cautions and concerns. So I am going to just skip right through these till I get to a couple of them that I've added here. There's been some question about, well, we've got all these funds, all this money coming in, why can't we roll back taxes or have other spending? A lot of the funds we get are called special revenue funds, and the governmental accounting industry, that is a classification that we use. Those include if you remember, a couple years ago, we started receiving the American Recovery Act funds. That's like $3.2 million, and there's very specific federal guidelines on how those funds can be spent. It really boils down to it needs to be like a major infrastructure project that is going to help in the economic recovery following COVID. Local option gas taxes, those are restricted to transportation expenditures. They can be either for operation and maintenance or for capital improvements or, street repaving or street rebuilding. Discretionary sales taxes is also restricted. That is for infrastructure additions or upgrades. They don't want you spending DST monies, as those are referred to, for just operation and maintenance. Community redevelopment agencies, that's the CRA, and it is restricted to that area, and those expenditures should be items that increase the tax base of that process and that system. Recreation impact fees, you're probably aware, that's on residential properties, and it is intended to be for new facilities or improvements, things that add to the capacity of our parks and recreation facilities. Parking in lieu of fund, that is where people are developers, if they can't meet the parking requirements, they can actually buy into a amortization of the cost of those parking spaces. So as they pay those fees, they are put in a separate special revenue fund to keep track of them. Stormwater fees, that is for the operation and maintenance of the stormwater system only, and for improvements that would be to that system. We have the Law Enforcement Trust Fund, and that is set up in accordance with state statutes. Every time we go to spend that money, we don't just adopt a budget at the year, because those funds, according to the statute, are intended for things that come up during the year for police reasons. And each of those items have to be individually brought to the city council before they are allowed to be spent. Cemetery Trust Fund, half of the fees collected for the cemetery are used for operations, and the other half needs to be for expansion of the capacity of the cemetery. So we do have two separate pots of money within that fund. All those special revenue funds, in order to track what we're doing with those funds, we assign project numbers. And those project numbers are accounted for in the capital projects fund. It may be that part of the funding is coming from DST and part of it's coming from the Community Redevelopment Agency. So that allows us to consolidate those funds, pay the bills out of the capital projects fund, and keep track of those projects. The fund most people are familiar with is the general fund. This is all the unrestricted revenues that come into the city that aren't separated out either to the enterprise funds or the special revenue funds. So it covers your common governmental functions of police, public works, leisure services, and community development departments. It includes property taxes, franchise fees, utility taxes, any state revenues that are not restricted, licenses and permits, rents and charges and reimbursements. Pretty much any receipt that comes in that's not earmarked for one of the special revenue funds or the enterprise funds comes into the general fund. Enterprise funds includes the golf course, airport, and building. Those revenues are collected within those funds and are restricted to the use of those, or to the operation of those funds. They could, if they were really making a profit and it was decided, well, some of those money should be paid for other purposes, it could be done probably through city council action. But for the most part, and in our case in particular, those revenues stay in those funds to support their operations. The idea of enterprise funds is they are intended to be self-supporting. Doesn't mean they have to be, doesn't mean it's a crime not to have them self-supported, but we try to do the best we can to balance those. I did just want to put in a notation tonight that we are scheduled for a workshop meeting with the city council to cover all the aspects of the budget. We would go into the enterprise funds and all these special revenue funds and basically show you more detail of what's being spent. But in the interest of time, I will wrap that up unless you have any concerns or questions about the PowerPoint or just an overview.
I have one question. I guess this is an appropriate time, since you're up here, I'll ask you. You're showing on page 185, where you're doing the projected balances on the funds, you're showing $3 million of our reserves being used to self-insure the docks. And then in 2025 and 6, I think, that drops down to $250,000. Is there some event that you think may happen that we don't have to self-insure after that point?
Okay, my purpose of setting aside the $3 million was to counter an increase in premiums we have on our insurance policy on the docks. That is risen to like $60,000 a year premium. The amount of coverage we get from that, when you look at and try to do the math, well, if we had a big incident where the docks were destroyed, we would probably only gain maybe 1.2 or 3 million. So what I'm trying to do is say that we need a $3 million self-insurance account.
Right.
DST is one part of my formula here to make that happen, but I couldn't do that out of DST funds because they are pretty much obligated to the extent I couldn't set aside $3 million. But currently in the general fund, I could.
Right.
So I'm saying I'd set aside $3 million of our cash reserves and earmark that and say that's in case a hurricane hits and FEMA denies coverage or, we have a problem on how much. 2 years from now, I would say then we would switch that and reduce it to $250,000 to be earmarked in general fund, only to take care of something that's not a major storm, but it does some significant damage through some act of God. And then we would move and also set up that year $3 million out of the DST fund.
Okay, so you transfer
to cover
the $3
those
million.
major instances.
All right, so you transfer the source of the $3 million from the general fund to
Just
the
did a
DST.
switcheroo, yes.
Okay, yeah. And the interesting thing is the reason that matters is what you can use these funds for.
Yes.
Okay, so, once you get enough money in DST to use that to back up the docks, you're actually saying you're going to spend DST to do what you can do with the DST funds.
Yeah, but if you had like $100,000
Right.
repair to be made, that's not really
Right.
DST. It's
Yeah, I understand. I just wanted to know if you thought there was something you were going to do in that period of time to have that $3 million kind of slide
retirement,
around.
maybe.
No, I think we settled that 2 years ago.
We did.
You can't.
No.
You can't retire.
Yeah.
We canceled your retirement plan.
Man, I've served my time.
We did. So Ken, let me.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the presentation. I think people out there who are watching that don't understand where these funds can be used, it's a great help for them to understand. We just can't take all this money and do what we want to with it.
It's not one pot, yes.
That's right. We just can't do that. Okay.
Right. So Ken, let me ask you, one of the reasons why we're doing this is our docks were damaged by the storms, and the insurance would not pay for that because it's storm damage. Is that correct?
FEMA has rules.
FEMA, I'm talking about our insurance.
But if we had a major storm that took out the docks, first thing is you think, well, FEMA will help cover part of that cost. They have rules that if you previously had damage and collected from FEMA, which we did back for Hurricane Matthew, you have to keep it insured. Because the next time it happens, they're saying, well, you didn't insure it, so we're not only not going to cover your current claim, we're going to go back and ask for those funds we paid you previously. Mm-hmm. So it just makes no sense to...
So self-insuring meets their requirements?
Yes, and I'll work with our insurance broker to make sure, we probably want to have some kind of resolution or something establishing that account more formally, but for budget purposes, that's to the extent we've gotten so far.
Okay.
Right. All right. Thank you. That was good for me.
Yes.
Mr. McPartland, do you have anything for Mr. Kilgore?
No, he does a fantastic job.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ken. Next.
Mayor, Council, Cynthia Watson, HR Director. I just wanted to bring you up to date on a couple items that you had asked for information on. The first is the AARP Senior Community Service Employment Program that Councilman McPartlin had spoken about a few meetings ago. We've been a member, the city has been a member since 2016. The program is a federal and/or state-funded program that assists senior citizens 55 and older to get back into the workplace. The program places seniors with a host business, such as the city, in a temporary assignment to help them update their skills and equip them with new skills. The seniors' wages are paid through the AARP program, so the city isn't putting out any funds or anything like that to pay their wages. They earn $11 per hour, which is the Florida's minimum wage, and as of September 30th of this year, the minimum wage goes up to $12 an hour. For a person to qualify, they must be 55 years of age or older, unemployed, they have to live in Indian River County, and they have to meet the federal income guidelines of $18,225 or less. I was told that there really aren't that many participants in the Sebastian area, or in Indian River County. So that's why we haven't had that many participants here at the city. When they have someone who comes in and registers with them, if they're within Sebastian, then I'll receive a phone call and ask if we're interested. So we conduct interviews. I've conducted a couple interviews already for participation. The individuals that we spoke to, they need to come up to meet some of our standards here, and then we'll bring them back in for re-interviews and then put them in a position. They can be here from anywhere from 6 months to several years if we need them, or if they can't find a position. And the program will pay for their wages. So if anyone is interested in this program that live here in Sebastian or within Indian River County, and they actually need, need finances, they can call the AARP Foundation at 321-956-1444. Does anybody have any questions about the program?
I do have one question. And I apologize, and I might be slightly to Mr. Benton, I'm asking this. Is a employee precluded from serving on a city board?
I would have to double check our charter, but I don't believe legally you could do that.
I don't know the answer myself, and the reason I ask is I was wondering if that meant somebody that served on one of our boards, would they be able to work in this program? And I guess that's a question that's up for discussion. We have a lot of senior citizens that are on boards that might be looking for a part-time job or something, so.
Yeah, you just can't violate the dual office holding, but you can run for city council if you, obviously you're a city resident. If you're an employee, it doesn't, as long as you're,
as long as
meet
you
the requirements.
qualifications.
Yes, as long as you meet the requirements.
Well, that's good to
It's
know.
not dual office holding to be
Okay.
just an employee. You'd have to be like a charter officer or a city council member, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
The second item had to do with the handbook. I actually have, I'm working on it. There's policies that are so old that we're trying to rewrite. There are certain policies that need to be established. And so once those are written and we can put those in the handbook, then I'll have our attorney review the handbook, and I'd like to have it out before the new fiscal year, which is October.
All right, so these jobs that you're talking about, they're temporary jobs or for the seniors that come in? Is there a requirement for the amount of hours that they can work? They can only work up to a certain amount of hours?
They can work up to 18 hours a week.
18 hours a week? Okay.
And Ms. Watson, I know you said it's through AARP, but is this program, does it have a specific name to the program?
It's called the AARP Senior Community Service Employment Program.
Okay, thank you.
I said temporary, but I meant part-time.
The temporary positions are part-time.
Right, yeah. And they can only work up to 18 hours a week.
Yeah, up to 18 hours.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Anything else?
Next.
Okay, thank
That
you.
still works out to $200 a week for somebody who's only earning $1,500 a month. That's a heck of an improvement for their situation. And Mr. Mayor, just so you know, that 2 of these positions actually worked for the county's Veteran Services Office, answering the phones and doing some clerical work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You have anything else, Mr. McPartland?
No, sir.
All right.
All right, so now, Mr. Mayor, those are the presentations that we had for this workshop, and now we'll kind of open it up to you all to ask any questions in regards to the budget that you all have.
Okay, why don't we have the chief come up?
Huh?
Why don't we ask the chief to come to the microphone?
What do you want the chief up? You just want to call him up?
Well, he's back there and he wants to talk.
Oh, okay. Well, come on down, chief, if you
I actually
want to talk.
I actually have a couple of questions.
Oh, okay.
They're not bad questions, actually. Okay, I understand that right now we're approximately $4,000 behind the average starting salary within the geographical area that we're operating in for officers. Is that true? Okay.
Everybody else is starting at 50,000.
Yeah.
And we're at 46.
So I would like to see us, in this budget, increase the salaries so that we match those starting salaries and we do something with compression, and put the money in the budget to begin October the 1st. At the same time, not just to single out the police department, but we can also ask the city manager to try to determine whether there's any discrepancy similar to that in the non-police and the administrative staff, and see if we maybe need to do something. You're not going to be able to hire officers, and you probably won't be able to keep some if we don't catch up with that. So.
No, sir, you're absolutely right.
Okay.
We are currently losing some people. We've gotten some resignations, and that's specifically why they're leaving.
Yeah. So if it's a sense of the council, I'd like to go ahead and increase the salaries both for the police department and for the non-police office union. Between now, have the city manager do that and bring it back as part of the budget presentation in September for final approval, so that we see some dollars in here that cover that.
Yeah, so we need a consensus so that the city manager can proceed with that.
Yeah, if I understand it, what we're doing in this workshop is we're identifying things we'd like to see change in the budget, because they're going to bring it back to us for approval.
Exactly.
And so if we want to see him add some funds in there so that we correct this discrepancy and try to get ourselves on a level playing field, I think we should tell him to do that, and knowing that we're going to get a number that's bigger than what we're seeing in this budget in September.
I've actually had quite a bit of conversation with the city manager about this over the past couple weeks in preparation for this budget season, and I think he's probably got a pretty good handle on what it will cost us out of the gate and all of that down the road here. So we have to, or we're not going to have police officers.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's not just our starting pay, it's probably every step thereof, so.
Well, we can't just increase the starting pay without taking care of the compression issue, which means we're going to be increasing a lot of people beyond the union negotiated 5% in October to do that. So,
city manager has something to say.
yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Benton, you have something to say? No? No, okay, so, but not only just the police department, though, we have to look out for all of our employees here, and we realize if we keep going down this road and not increasing those salaries, which means taxes got to go up, but we have to keep the city running so that people can still retain the level of service that they have. If we kick this thing down the road too much further, then it's just going to compound on us, and over the next 2 or 3 years, it's just going to cost us triple of what we're talking about now. So
So even though the chief's the one standing there, I think the second part of what I'd like to see the consensus on is that we ask him to do the same type of evaluation for the clerk, for the administrative and public works and so forth staff
Yes.
to determine if there are some discrepancies there that we need to deal with.
Yes. In my meeting with Mr. Benton, he said he was already on top of that.
Yeah. I know, but what he needs is the council to officially tell him to be on top of that.
I think I hear at least 3 of us, 4 of us, saying
Yes,
that.
yes.
I know, I've had the same conversation with him. I know he's done a lot of work on it, but he needs us to say formally, do the work.
Please do it.
Yeah. Let me bring in Mr. McPartland because we're talking and he can't get in. Do you have anything to say on that, Mr. McPartland?
Oh, I'll have a whole lot later on, but I agree with increasing to be competitive and to retain quality officers.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like you have a consensus.
And now my second question, which is my last one for you, I swear.
Is there?
The indoor firing range. You've
sir.
probably heard a lot about this from a lot of different places. Best case, if you could find a grant, is the city's going to have to kick in about $1 million on that. I would be surprised if you can find a grant that's less than a 20% match for the city on that. The question in my mind comes about as to whether there's options to the Sebastian building their own indoor firing range. You know, what does Fellsmere do? What's the sheriff do? What does Vero do? It would be an option to try to approach the county on maybe partnering with them to put an indoor firing range at the firing range off 512. Are there some things we can do besides trying to build one? The cost of that, if we open it to the public, is going to be, I would be surprised if it's less than $1 million a year to run it, because we have to have at least 2 people out there to have a qualified person watching people as they fire their weapons. We have to have somebody out there doing administrative work. We have to do a lot of things. We might let the indoor firing range get in the business of selling bullets if we want to try to do that, but I don't know if we want to try to do that, you know. So the real issue I see not only is building it, it's in running it and maintaining it and keeping it operational and knowing that, you know, I don't know what the time frame is on having to repair the back walls of these things from the damage they get from so many rounds being fired into them and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff to be done with that. If it's in the CIP, I'd like to see it maybe move a year further out or so and give us time to really go through a good planning cycle on that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but.
So I've already spoken to the city manager, and we have pushed it forward. Okay. There's definitely some other things, specifically the pay, that needs to be addressed way before the range. And to answer your questions, and I'll probably do it a little backwards, but as far as staff goes, the idea wasn't to open up a public range. Yes. The idea was to open up a police department range, and we have the staff already that are certified to be firearms instructors and as well take care of the facility itself, which is what other agencies do with their firearms range. This idea started last year. Mr. Carlisle was on board, and Brian and I actually went down with Mr. Carlisle to visit Palm Beach Gardens indoor range. And they showed us how they run it, how they operate it with their current staff, which is what the idea would be for us. As far as other ideas, that's what we do now. So the other agencies all have their own, not every agency, but the ones you spoke of. Vero Beach has a range, it's an outdoor range. So it's, you know, it's not rain or shine. You can't be out there in the, you know, the inclement weather. I know we have to train for everything, but we don't want somebody getting, you know, struck with a lightning bolt in training. But Indian River County Sheriff's Department, they have a range they utilize. They have a deal with the state prison down south, Indian River County, that they took over the range part and they use that range. Palm Bay uses the range, and it's in Palm Bay, but it's you know, available to other agencies. We actually pay a fee to use that range, which between that and Vero, they're probably the 2 closest ones. The issues we run into is, you know, when we want to schedule training, when our people are available, those range, if they're taken, then we can't use them. So now we have to schedule around all these other agencies that are using those facilities, especially if it's the agency that owns a facility. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get them to move over so that somebody else can go there and use their facility. Also, the Indian River State College down in St. Lucie County, they have an indoor range, and they allow us to use it. But we have to work around every academy and any other agency. You know, you have to schedule it. You just have to schedule it ahead of time. And every time we hire somebody, you know, we need to run them to a range, so that would be a benefit of having our own. Obviously, you know, using a firearm is, you know, one of the most high liability things we can do, and we need to be proficient. So it's not something we want to wait for other people to allow us to train. We need to train as often as we can.
Yeah.
And that's the idea behind building our own and having a facility here that the city can use. And then whether or not we want to open it up publicly or use our staff to allow, you know, training classes or something to recuperate some of the money or make money for the city to help run it is something, you know, that definitely would be beneficial, and, you know, I would imagine everyone would be open to.
Okay.
So there's several ideas for that, but.
Okay.
Yeah, let me ask you something real quick.
Yes, sir.
Where did the $5 million part come from? Because I know 7, 8 years ago, I was at a facility down in Palm Beach somewhere that they built, and the agency, I'm not going to talk about which one, but they built a indoor range there, shooting range, which was very nice. Everybody can get out of the weather and all that, but at that time, that facility cost them $8 million.
So the facility we toured was, they said it was, I forget, I don't have details in front of me, but they built it, and they built it for $2 million, and it was, what, 5 or 8 years ago, I forget what he said, but so we were just projecting forward, because we included a construction company in this process, because we were hoping that they would have some ability to help us with grants and stuff like that. So when we were just seeking out ideas, trying to figure this out, and that's just the best estimate we could come up with. For right now. I mean,
Yeah, I know, and then the further we go down the road, it's obviously going to cost us more with the price of everything going up now, so that's what we're dealing with now. Everybody in the public is dealing with everything going up through the roof, and we're going to have to do the same thing here, because it not only affects us individually and homeowners, it affects the city as well, because we buy those same products and services too, so that's...
Yeah, Chief, as I understand it, this isn't just a shooting range, it's also a training range, like a scenario training and things like that. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely, yeah. It was, actually, the tour was quite impressive, but, I mean, they have a bay window where they can drive a car in there. The indoor range allows you to turn the lights off, to use, you know, red and blue strobes, because, you know, any environment other than rain, you can do inside this facility, so that we can prepare the officers, you know, as best as we can.
I just wanted to clarify that. You already clarified that this wasn't suggested to be a public range, not that that couldn't be something thought about down the road, but it wasn't just a range where there's a desk and a target down the way. There's other things, and that's helping why the cost is as high as it is, involving with the building and everything. I mean, it's a big cost. What are we paying for fees to go to other ranges now?
So I believe right now we pay $2,000 to Palm Bay, $2,000 a year for all of our officers to have access, you know, when we can schedule.
When you can schedule.
Vero allows us to go for free. A few months ago, the contract came before council to approve, because we had to get it signed.
But both of those ranges are simply for qualifying, because they're just shooting or practice. They're just regular shooting ranges.
No, there's some different training you can do there, not
Okay.
as much as you can do in a closed environment that you control, but there are some other training opportunities with those outdoor ones as well.
Well, hopefully down the road we can find some grants and look at this a little more seriously.
Definitely.
Appreciate it.
So that's been moved out of the 23, 24 year,
That was further.
Ms. Kilgore? I mean, not Mr. Kilgore, Mr. Benton. Has that been moved out of the 23, 24 year further out?
So
in the CIP?
this is the 23-24 year that we're discussing.
All right.
So we're going to plan to move it out 2 additional cycles. So it would then go out to the 25-26.
Okay, so it will not be in the 23, 24 year summary, CIP?
No, it will not be in that CIP summary in
Okay.
future budget documents that you see.
That's all I wanted to know. Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, you're talking about the facility, but have we looked at where that facility will be, or possibly? It's one thing to talk about it, but we still have to have a location as well.
So we have looked at some preliminary locations. Don't really want to go into discussions on that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to know if you all have looked at that.
We have looked at some preliminary locations within the city, yes.
Okay.
And one of my greatest pet peeves, and can we not buy some large engine cars for non-patrol officers and people who don't need them? Like, does the does the code enforcement guy, not that I don't like those two guys, they do a great job, do they need a very large?
No, sir, we've already switched. We have a Maverick on order for one of the code enforcement officers.
I've
That
been
was a
asking this
plan-
question since I was on the P and Z 18 years ago, when the first CIP came aboard. I said, can we not get some cheaper cars? You know?
No, that idea was actually an employee that's not even here anymore, that
Yeah.
their thought was to buy that car for code, or, vehicles that big and then pass them down to Public Works. And since then, that has stopped and we have switched.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
I
good
think
job on it, very good job on the budget.
Yeah, thank you. And also, I think some of the things were said about those big trucks is they have to go pick up signs and some other things, and that's why they needed the big truck, but we don't really need that.
The only
No,
signs I've seen
that's
are the
why it's
Fred
down to a
Jones
Maverick,
signs.
still has a pickup truck.
Mr. McPartland, don't forget Mr. McPartland.
Yeah. Mr. McPartland, you have anything for the chief?
No, but I don't think we're ready for any indoor firing range for quite a few years, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you, sir.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, I know you all chose to go with the police department and the chief first. Now we can just kind of open it up to whoever you all would like to ask questions of next, and if, depending on who you want to ask.
Yeah, I want to ask one. If we go to rollback, we're looking at an $846,000 shortfall, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
This may not be the right time. I was going to bring this up in our council meeting later on, but I'll bring it up now. I watched the Natural Resources Board meeting the other night, and they had a good dissertation on the Sustainable Sebastian Initiative, and I was just kind of concerned. The objectives that they're getting ready to move into have a lot to do with training and education, and they don't have any money. I know they have a really big staff problem because of the staff issues that we have within growth management. I don't see, that I can't, I'm not going to ask, that's not my job to ask to add staff in the budget. But I'd kind of like to see us have some money put in this budget, and also, and the reason I was going to bring it up during the council meeting, I'd like to see us have some money put in our current year budget, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 for them to acquire materials that they need to do this training and education. I think they've only got like $900 that they can spend, the Natural Resources Board, on Sustainable Sebastian. So they need funds. I don't know, Brian, if you think this is the time to bring it up, or should I bring it up in the council meeting?
So I had a discussion with Ms. Frazier today, and so Ms. Frazier did budget for, I think it's $15,000 in this year's budget for LID natural plantings that supported the Sustainable Sebastian, a portion of those elements that involve native plantings and those LID, demos areas that they're looking to do. So we do have that money set aside, but if there's additional funds that are, necessary that you all feel would support their Sustainable Sebastian initiative, then that's something that we can look at adding to the budget for next fiscal year. And obviously, if you all support putting money in this year's budget, then we can look at this year's and see if we can find some funds to support them. And I would just, it's really important to not just give it to NRB to use for whatever. It's got to be used specifically for I think it was 6 objectives that to support the Sustainable Sebastian initiatives. And we can look at doing that.
Yeah, because I'm actually thinking more along the objective 1 and 2, which are that's the rolling out of some things, and there's a lot of language in there that talks about education and training, and I was just thinking that they need materials to do that, and if they need money to make that happen, we can try to work on making that happen.
That's something that we can definitely speak with Ms. Frazier and Felicia and have that discussion.
Okay.
And look at adding some additional funds for that.
I don't disagree with Mr. Dodd. Although I would like to hear what the objectives of the money is going to be. I mean, obviously, we can put money in there. I mean, I don't know if Ms. Frazier has any ideas of what they want to do now or not, and I know it's kind of putting you on the spot on something new. But I would like to hear, if maybe next when we discuss this, just some ideas of what kind of training, what kind of things they're trying to get and accomplish?
So I do know that at the next, I can't remember if it's at the next council meeting or the one following that, they're gonna bring the initiatives from Sustainable Sebastian to you all, but they finalized at their meeting.
Okay.
So that discussion will come to you all, and then at that point, I think that's probably a more appropriate time to discuss possibly what funding they need. And like I said, I just want to clarify that it's not funding for them to just go out and enjoy NRB, but it's more to support goal objectives 1 and 2 is a good recommendation with that, but we need to be specific for what the funding's going to go for.
Yeah, and I will tell you
towards
that
that
the
board.
Natural Resources Board that we have right now, we couldn't buy if we had all the money in the world. And so, I don't believe they're gonna just go out and spend money to enjoy themselves. I don't think they're the type of people who like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I think they're more critical, though, is we need to, Ms. Fraser needs some more help down there in that department. So, and just like other departments within the city. So I think as long as we focus on that and help getting some people in there to help out, to do some of these projects, stay on top of things, that's most important right now, so I think.
I think I agree. That sounds like the perfect time to come and hit us with shortfalls, things they're gonna need, and that way we can help address whatever is needed. That sounds like the perfect meeting to do it. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question for, about the working waterfront expansion that maybe I can get Ms. Fraser to.
Okay, yeah.
I'm looking at the CIP right now, so.
Good evening.
Hi. The working waterfront expansion, if my understanding is right, this involves, you're getting grant money, and this involves actually extending the dock space at the working waterfront so that there's more dockage that's there?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any, I don't see anything in here to deal with Hurricane Harbor, that part of the working waterfront. Is there not a need for us? March of '24 is the date in which we can start doing work on that. Should we not have some money to deal with that?
I'm glad you asked, sir, because we have put money in there. In my request, I put $50,000 to hire a consultant to start looking at that side of the working waterfront park to start determining what we want to do. So, Brian and I have been talking about going out and actually doing the whole design and permitting together. Look at the whole site together. So we're going to take that 50,000. I feel confident, hopefully, and I'm not jinxing myself, that we will get that find grant, and we can marry those two dollar sources together, the 120 and the 50, and hire somebody. We have some really great continuing services consultants on board, and we feel confident that we should be able to utilize them in coming up with a full design, kind of in accordance with our CRA master plan, what we were talking about. Because you're right, we shouldn't have to wait until March of 2024 to start addressing what we want to do with that building. So that was our thinking along there. You will see an extra 50,000 for consulting in the CRA.
All right, that's in the CRA? It's under the CRA for that?
I'm almost positive. Am I correct, Ken? Yes. Don't lead me astray there. Yes, it's under consultants, under operations. It's the second line down.
Okay, it's in the operations budget.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I was looking at the CIP budget, not the operations budget when I looked at that. Okay.
What page is that on?
Now, should we not?
99, sir.
99?
99.
Should we not put a line item in the CIP for some dollars? I mean, if we don't have a CIP budget identified for doing something with that building, is that not going to make it more difficult to go out for grants?
May I? This is, and these are great questions, Councilman Dodd, because it's in alignment with all of our conversations since the CRA master plan was presented. That, now that that is part of the master plan, we can now move forward this next year with design and permitting, and then you'll see in the CIP, it's quite a hefty tag, right, for 500,000 as we move along. However, that would include the entire site. And we're going to be going for other grant dollars, possibly even some legislative, appropriations. Thank you. That word went right out of my brain there. Because FIND wants to support us in that. And of course, Debbie Mayfield is a big supporter of this, and FCT. So we feel confident that we might be able to get some legislative appropriations for this project.
Okay, am I incorrect in saying that the Hurricane Harbor building is not actually part of the working waterfront?
You're not correct in that. The Hurricane Harbor,
it is
that whole
considered-
entire site was purchased by FCT for working waterfront.
Including Hurricane Harbor?
That's correct. And
Okay,
so
all
we
right.
have to supply a building in accordance with the FCT management plan to have a fish market and a museum. Now, it doesn't, and we probably should have event space for the commercial fishermen and for other events that we can present the working waterfront and really help it pay for itself.
Because we've got money in here in the CIP for
Correct.
the Riverview Park Master Plan, which is $500,000 in 24-25 and $500,000 in 25-26.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got the grant program, that's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Central Avenue Catalyst site, which is out in 27-28.
Yeah.
And then the working waterfront expansion, which is the $120,000 and then $500,000 for the next 3 years.
Correct.
And the $120,000, I think that's the consulting contract you're talking about.
That's correct.
Okay, and you're
That's what we
saying
asked
that-
for from FIND.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the work that we have to do to come up with a design on Hurricane Harbor building is included in that 120, or are you going to increase that 120?
No, sir. So the 120 is what we requested from FIND. We have to come up with half of that, right? So basically FIND, if we're lucky, again, will give us half of that 60,000. But it's prudent for us to put it in the budget, the whole amount, because we may not get the grant. The 50,000 would be added to the 120 in order to hire somebody to do the whole design and permitting of the entire site.
So we're saying that's really $170,000 then?
That's correct.
Okay. So
That's correct.
So we should change that in the CIP?
Well, no, the 50,000 is for consultant under CRA. It's just for design.
separate.
It doesn't have to be in the CIP. Yes,
I just want to make sure it's in the budget.
it's in the budget.
And I would also like to see something in the budget that tells us that starting in 24, 25, 26, that we're going to spend $1 million or $500,000 or $750,000 or whatever to do something with that building. Because right now, it's not recognized in our 5-year plan. So if your consultant comes up next October and say you need $1 million, we haven't recognized that in our 5-year plan this year.
Mr. Benton?
I just want to caution a little bit, we haven't, so one of the reasons, it's included under the working waterfront expansion because we really haven't made decisions on what's going to happen to that Hurricane Harbor building at this time.
I understand that.
So I just want to caution, stating what's going to possibly happen in the future. We know some work has to be done, but that's why we've allocated as working waterfront expansion, because it's the entire site, not specifically allocating money that may not align with what you all direct us to do to the property.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. This $1.5 million under working waterfront expansion that we've got starting in 24, $500,000 a year, that, in your opinion, is sufficient to cover the expansion of the dock space and what we have to do to that building. Is that reasonable?
We're hopeful.
It's a WAG.
Exactly. And again, we'll be pursuing other grant dollars and are pretty hopeful about that. But also, please bear in mind that in the CRA master plan, we outlined how much, we sunset in 10 years. And this is the amount of money that we have allocated that we'll get in that 10-year span. And so we tried to stay very close to that as we looked at the Riverview Park and the working waterfront. And again, that doesn't include grants that we can get. There's some out there, so.
All right, I'm comfortable. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I just want to make sure, did we get grant money in for the expansion of the commercial fishing pier there yet, or we're still working on that?
No, sir, that's the fine grant. We should hear everything. We should hear whether we get the dollars or not by October 1st, around that time. But again, our presentations went swimmingly. They were very, very engaged, very supportive, and it's going well.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Anybody else? Mr. McPartland?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Fraser.
Thank you.
And I can't let Karen Miller off easy.
Oh, Lord, Ed, come on.
You may have to come up because that's the way they're supposed to do it, but, and I think I've answered my own question, and it had to do with the stuff you put in tonight's agenda for the council meeting.
Can we wait for that?
No, we have till 6 o'clock. Okay, I just have one question. It's simple. The money that's in here for street work includes the swale work. It's just, and if I understand that correctly from looking at the presentation that you're going to do to the city council later, that shows the swale work that's going to be done in conjunction with the street work. So this money includes the swale work. Is that correct?
So what you're going to see in the council meeting later tonight, that plan shows the locations of the swales, but you'll be approving just the road paving tonight.
Okay.
That is not including the swale money,
so,
but the budget has accounted for swale work.
and where does it show that? Help me out, because I didn't see it.
Ken did all.
Ken did all.
Because if we have.
I just want to make sure we don't do what we've done for the last year and a half, repair streets and not touch the swales.
I had to spread it around. I've got ARPA money, the American Recovery Act. I've got DST funds and local option gas tax. And I had to follow those restrictions for.
Okay, now where in the budget does it show those funds being spent on swale repair and stormwater repair?
It's in the capital improvement program.
So I think for clarification, it is included in the street reconstruction and the street repaving. It's not a separate line item.
That's what I was
that
getting at.
showcases swale work cost. It's not a separate,
Okay.
it's included.
So
within
the money to do the swales is actually within this line item for street repaving and street reconstruction?
And then only tonight you're approving the road paving portion.
Yes,
because we have not moved
but the
forward
money's
with it.
in the budget to do the swales at the same time, and we're gonna approve those at a later time. Is that what's gonna happen with
We're
that?
putting that out to bid, but in order to
Okay,
make that
all right.
bid, we got some estimates so that we could have the funds.
That answers my question.
you.
Because I was just wondering where the money was to do the swale work, and if it's in here, we're in good shape.
Anything
Thank
else?
you.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to have public comment?
We
know
do,
we're getting,
but
we're
we
getting
do.
short
We're
on
getting
time,
close.
and I want to
Yeah.
make sure we don't
Yeah.
miss
That's
that.
fine. Do you have any other questions for anybody? Sorry, Mr. McPartland, do you have questions for Ms. Miller?
Oh, no. She did
Okay.
a great job so for last week. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? Yes, sir, come on up. Do we have anybody on Zoom with their hands raised, just for my info?
No, at this time.
Okay.
Good
That
evening,
one.
Council. Nathan McCollum.
Second mic, yeah.
Well, I had the PowerPoint right here.
The power.
Two questions, and I don't know that we can answer. In the presentation that was on the city's website, on the PowerPoint on there, it mentions about the stormwater fee will need to be increased, but I don't see the amount of money or any kind of thing that discusses what that would be. And I'm looking at you because I think this was your presentation, but.
No, that's fine. You can answer, Mr. Benton, you can.
Yeah, so if you all are fine, I'll answer it.
Yeah, answer it, yeah.
So staff's recommendation, going into this budget season was to look at increasing stormwater fees next fiscal year. So our recommendation was not to increase them this year. For clarification purposes, the Budget Advisory Committee made a recommendation to come to City Council to increase the stormwater fees by $2 beginning this fiscal year. So that's why you didn't see a lot of discussion on it, was originally staff had not made that recommendation for this fiscal year. The Budget Committee did make that recommendation to City Council.
I don't think anybody's going to argue over $2. I just wanted to make sure we weren't seeing a 100% increase like we did the last time.
Correct. So that was our discussion point, was it would have to be looked at next fiscal year. They made a recommendation to increase it by $2 this fiscal year.
And my other question is, within the budget I haven't seen the package you all have, but, within the budget, does that include the income of the 4% franchise fees for trash collection?
3.
Or the franchise fees collect,
It's 3%.
3%, I'm sorry.
3%.
But then then that's going
We're
towards
not
waste
collecting
management's
that.
costs.
We're not actually getting that. We assess 3% franchise fee, but we turned around because Waste Management is doing the 15-month billing, that 3% franchise fee
Okay,
is
so that
being
won't
kept by
occur till
them.
the following year then?
Yes.
Okay, my
Right.
mistake.
Well, this is something council needs to discuss.
Correct.
I'm of the opinion that starting in October 24, we don't need to pay a franchise fee to Waste Management. So we should
And I
do
don't
away with that
disagree.
completely.
That's
just my opinion.
Didn't know where that was going, so I figured I'd ask the question.
Right.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, sir. Is there anyone else from the audience? Oh, come on up.
When we get there.
Grace Reed, but I'm going to be real quick. I have 4 minutes, but I got about 10 minutes worth of stuff, so. You're going to be doing the budget discussing the trim millage in the meeting. I can come back during public comment at that time, because all of my stuff is not necessarily numbers. It's a lot of other whys. So hopefully, I'm going to be put in a position where you can't answer me because public comment during the council meeting is different than a workshop. So hopefully, I might be able to get some answers. So I'll come back. Because we only have...
That's actually a line item in the budget, in the agenda, so you should be able to discuss it at that time.
Oh, yeah, I can discuss a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
All right, thank you. Do we have anyone else from the audience? No one on Zoom?
No, sir.
All right, so what I'd like to do, I think we're pushing right at 6 here, but I think what we'll do is adjourn this meeting and we'll reconvene the city council meeting at 6:15 or 6:10. Anybody have any objection to that? Or you want to start straight away? I'm okay with that.
I'm good with 6:05.
Yeah, 6:05 works for me.
Okay.
Gives time for the bathroom break.
All right, we're adjourned. We'll be back at 6:05.